My smartphone tumbled from my grasp and smacked against the ground with a heavy bang. The display remained lit, displaying the photo. There she was, my girl Hope, beaming in her bridal attire beside a fellow I hardly recognized. "Hope, have you tied the knot?" "Yes, Mom." "Just yesterday." From the phone speaker came the bustle of the city, horns blaring, people walking, chatter everywhere, yet no trace of joy. "How come you kept it from me? Why wasn't I there?" "It was a quiet affair, Mom. Just close kin." That term echoed relentlessly in my mind. Kin. I retrieved the device, gazed at the static grin captured there, and it hit me. Perhaps I'd faded into the background, something overlooked beyond the borders of their world. I erased the image, and amid the quiet that followed, a riddle took shape. One I still can't resolve. What happens to a mom when she's no longer part of the clan? I'm Clara Mae Harrison, and across my 67 years, I'd held the conviction that family meant the world. I brought up Hope single-handedly once my spouse Elijah left us. I toiled as a housekeeper for 2 households, the Rodwells and the Millers, to fund her university studies. I scrimped and stashed away every penny possible, all so she could enjoy the ceremony she'd always envisioned. I'd pictured myself standing by her side at the altar, clasping her hand as she fulfilled every woman's grandest aspiration. Yet on that Tuesday morning, while sipping my coffee and scrolling through my device, a Facebook snapshot upended it all. Hope stood in pristine white, arm in arm with her new spouse, Devin Hayes. The sole companions were his folks, Franklin and Eleanor Hayes. I pored over every inch of the picture again and again. Hope shone with a glow I'd never witnessed, her smile wider than ever. The post declared, "Our cherished moment, family whole." Family whole, excluding me. No invite, no chat, no reason given. I discovered my child's marriage like any random person stumbling upon online gossip. My spirit shattered deeper than it had when Elijah died. Perched in my Atlanta kitchen, mug trembling in my grip, it dawned on me that to Hope, I might now register only as a faded, troublesome echo from yesterday. I rang her thrice that day, but each call bounced to voicemail. I texted as if oblivious, inquiring if all was well, if she required support. Only in the late afternoon did a reply trickle in. "I'm good, Mom. We'll chat soon. We'll chat soon." Like her child's nuptials were some trivial matter to shelve. That evening, flat on my back in the dark, eyes fixed on the overhead, I grasped how my whole existence had revolved around motherhood to a daughter who'd outgrown my care. And in the hush of dawn, a transformed Clara Mae started to stir within. In the days that followed, recollections surged like tidal swells. I recalled Hope at age 5, struck down by pneumonia. I'd labor through the day scrubbing the Rodwell residence in Buckhead, then stitch away the evenings for the Millers in Sandy Springs. For a full 15 days, sleep came in fragments of just 3 hours nightly as I tended to her, ferried her to appointments, and procured those costly treatments. Once she mended, she wrapped me in an embrace and whispered, "Mom, someday I'll wed, and you'll shine as the loveliest bridesmaid ever." That promise nestled in my soul for over 20 years. I thought back to her 16th birthday bash, too. I'd hoarded funds for 2 straight years to craft an unforgettable event. I parted with heirloom pieces from my union with Elijah. I pulled overtime on Saturdays and Sundays. I skimped on my own necessities. We booked the Magnolia venue in Midtown. I snagged the finest gown within reach. I lined up an excellent DJ. I whipped up the soul food spread personally. On that occasion, Hope proclaimed me the greatest parent alive, vowing to cherish my efforts eternally. Visitors noted how affection infused every corner of the gathering. I reflected on the routine forfeits as well. The early rises at 5 a.m. to fix her school meal. The evenings devoted to aiding her studies despite my own incomplete schooling. The late nights vigilant as she socialized, fretting over her well-being. The Sunday outings hauling a crock of collard greens and ham hocks to Auntie Dolores's place, letting Hope bond with her dad's relatives. When she headed off to pursue a business degree, I ramped up my shifts. Mondays to Fridays went to the Rodwells cleaning, weekends to waitressing at upscale gatherings. I aimed for her to immerse solely in academics, free from financial woes. Whenever my joints throbbed from endless standing or my skin split from harsh soaps, I'd envision the promising path her schooling would pave. In her university phase, shifts in her demeanor emerged gradually. She skipped coming home promptly after lectures. Study groups, team assignments, clubs filled her calendar. Weekends vanished into outings with pals. I hadn't anticipated how to adjust. Places utterly unfamiliar to me. Whenever I inquired about her day, her replies grew briefer and more remote. "Everything's okay, Mom. I'll fill you in soon." But that promised update never arrived. It happened in her senior year of university that she first encountered Devin Hayes. The moment she brought him up, I caught a unique sparkle in her gaze. She couldn't stop chatting about him, his intelligence, his solid background, his grand visions for what's ahead. Seeing her so joyful filled me with warmth, yet a subtle unease stirred inside that I couldn't quite name. Suddenly it seemed like Devin embodied a realm where I had no place, a path forward that left no room for a mom who scrubbed floors in strangers' houses. On the occasion of Devin's initial visit for a meal, I prepared a feast of macaroni and cheese casserole, crispy fried chicken, glazed sweet potatoes, corn muffins, and iced tea. I poured my heart into it more than usual, eager to leave a positive mark. Devin behaved with manners and respect, though his gaze wandered over our modest dwelling with a look I struggled to interpret. Hope appeared on edge, repeatedly clarifying aspects of our lifestyle as though defending it. "Your home is quite charming, Mrs. Harrison," Devin remarked upon departing, yet his delivery carried an undercurrent that left me sensing the contrary. That evening, Hope pointed out that I'd come on too strong, probing excessively into his relatives, his career, and his aspirations. "Mom, not everybody opens up their entire story right away like we do." It marked the initial instance when I sensed myself being perceived as an issue needing resolution. Afterward, Devin's drop-ins tapered off. During those that occurred, the talks turned lighter, more stiff. Hope began devoting extra hours to him, returning home at progressively later times. Our weekly Sunday get-togethers dwindled to irregular, then vanished altogether. Devin and I have commitments emerged as her go-to excuse. At Hope's commencement, my pride overflowed to the point of tears, streaming the whole event. She'd accomplished what had eluded me, a full college diploma. Doors would open for her that stayed shut for me. Post-ceremony, we headed to a upscale eatery in Dakar for festivities. Devin had brought along his folks, Franklin and Eleanor Hayes. This was my proper introduction to them. Franklin held a supervisory role at a major firm in Sandy Springs. Eleanor had taught for decades prior to stepping away. Their discussions touched on vacations, high-end dining spots, and theater productions on Broadway. I attempted to join in, but I felt utterly out of my element. Bringing up my housekeeping work triggered an uncomfortable hush, which Hope hastily bridged by shifting topics. Later that night, back at our place, Hope uttered words that cut deep. "Mom, I appreciate your efforts to connect, but occasionally your comments come across the wrong way. Devin's parents are quite sophisticated." Sophisticated. The term lingered, gnawing at me. I lacked that polish. My affection, my hardships, my unwavering support, they paled against wealth and scholarly credentials. The ensuing period brought widening gaps. Hope landed a position at a prominent global firm. Devin held a solid gig, too. They began musing about securing their own spot, leasing a flat jointly. I endorsed it outwardly despite the ache within. "Folks your age require independence," I remarked, mustering false cheer. Once they settled into a posh neighborhood in Atlanta, I remained invited, but under strict timings and protocols. "Mom, it's best to ring ahead to check if we're free when you drop by," Hope advised. The easy freedom of popping in on my girl had evaporated for good. Interactions now demanded scheduling, like booking a medical or dental slot. My trips there grew further apart. Weekly at first, then bi-weekly, then monthly. On arrival, discussions centered on their careers, ambitions, social circle. I tuned in attentively, yet queries about my world seldom surfaced. It was as though I mattered solely as Hope's parent, nothing more. Come last year's festive period, I observed Hope and Devin gravitating toward the Hayes household more. His parents host such elegant customs, Hope clarified when I wondered about joining us for Christmas Eve supper like tradition dictated, but we'll organize it ourselves come next year, okay? That subsequent year arrived, excluding me. In February, Hope shared that she and Devin were contemplating matrimony. "That's fantastic, sweetheart," I burst out, a blend of delight and eagerness surging. My thoughts raced to arrangements. The venue, the gown, the blooms, the menu. "Picked a day yet. What can I do?" "Mom, we're aiming for low-key," she replied, but her eyes dodged mine slightly. "No need for extravagance. Ceremonies have simplified nowadays," I agreed, hiding a twinge of letdown. For ages I'd envisioned aiding in my soul child's nuptials. Time slipped by and talks regarding the plans for the wedding grew hazy and infrequent. Whenever I inquired about concrete arrangements, Hope responded with her usual line, "We're still sorting it out, Mama. I'll update you the moment we lock things down." A nagging sense that something was off began to creep in, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Come May, I saw Hope ramping up her Facebook activity, snaps with Devin, alongside the Hayes family at upscale eateries in unfamiliar spots. Yet during our face-to-face encounters, she skimmed over those outings with barely a word. It felt like she was juggling two separate worlds, one open to me, the other hidden away. By early June, my suspicions hardened into certainty that trouble was brewing. Hope bailed on 3 consecutive meetups, citing work pressures or sudden obligations every time. When we did connect at last, she came across as preoccupied and jittery. I confronted her outright. Was everything truly fine with Devin? Any issues there? "All's well, Mama," she replied, avoiding my gaze. "It's just the whirlwind of jobs and everything else." Everything else? That phrase echoed in my thoughts for days on end. What could possibly rank higher than looping in her own mom? The final chat I had with Hope before the revelation hit occurred on a lazy Sunday afternoon. I rang to suggest brunch the next Tuesday. "Can't do it, Mama," she said. "Got a crucial appointment bright and early." That struck me as strange. Tuesday mornings had been our cherished ritual since her childhood days. It was my sole free slot, no shifts at the Rodwells' place. "What about Wednesday?" I pressed. "Not sure, Mama. I'll scan my calendar and get back to you." But that follow-up never materialized, and I, true to form, hung on in quiet anticipation for a ring that never sounded. Precisely on that Tuesday morning, right when daughter and I ought to have shared that meal, I settled at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee and a wedge of pecan Danish. I hopped on Facebook to browse shots of neighbors and their little ones, only to stumble across the picture that shattered my world. There stood Hope, radiant as ever, clad in a modest yet refined gown, beaming beside Devin amid an unmistakable wedding rite. Behind them grinned the joyful visages of Franklin and Eleanor Hayes, attired smartly, serving as the sole observers to an occasion that rightfully should have included me. The caption declared, "At long last hitched. Gratitude to our loved ones for crafting this flawless day." Our loved ones, plural, yet I was nowhere to be seen. Absent from the frame, missing from the responses, omitted from the narrative that encapsulated my whole existence. I pored over each remark below that update. Old classmates offering cheers, colleagues dispensing well wishes, far-flung kin voicing shock at the unannounced nuptials. None so much as hinted at my no-show. As though I'd been wiped clean from Hope's history, those 28 years of devotion and hardship utterly scrubbed from her tale. The remainder of that day blurred in stunned disbelief. I kept glancing at my phone, yearning for a buzz, a message, a clarification. Zilch. Hope carried on seamlessly, uploading getaway pics from her honeymoon, acknowledging the accolades, broadcasting joyful snippets that barred me entirely. That evening, staring into the dimness of my modest sleeping quarters, a truth pierced deeper than I'd thought survivable. My girl hadn't simply overlooked me for her big day. She'd willfully shut me out. She'd opted on purpose to bar me from her life's pinnacle moment. And in that raw epiphany, I grasped that the existence I'd clung to was irretrievably done. Yet what Hope couldn't foresee was this. Her mama, Clara May Harrison, had amassed far beyond mere anguish across those decades of giving. She'd also hoarded a resilience she hadn't fully grasped, a poise that lay quiet but alive, and a resolve to act that stood poised to upend it all. The figure rising from those sheets on Wednesday dawn wasn't the same one who'd lingered in hopeful inclusion. This was a woman awakened to the roar of certain voids over any companionship, to the profoundest maternal affection, sometimes manifesting as self-regard. In Atlanta's hushed wee hours, as St. Jude's Episcopal Church bells tolled at 3 a.m., Clara May Harrison forged her inaugural fully autonomous choice in almost 30 years. If Hope's world held no space for her, then hers would close its doors to hope. But this chapter was merely unfolding, and the twists ahead would reshape every soul entangled in unimaginable fashions. The ensuing days dragged through a thick haze, obscuring any clear path for my future. Hope never reached out with answers, never appeared back at home. She showed zero regret. She kept sharing those honeymoon pics from Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, acting like everything was normal, like I was nothing more than some random follower scrolling her feed. Each fresh image hammered home the truth. I was completely out of her world now. I busied myself with chores around the house, attending Wednesday services at St. Jude's, chatting with my neighbor of decades, Mrs. Eleanor Rodriguez. Yet despite my efforts to bury it, the hurt lingered, a sharp pang in my heart that squeezed the air from my lungs, refusing to fade. It hit me hardest while rifling through faded documents in the oak chest that once was my mother's. Old birth certificates surfaced, vaccination cards I'd safeguarded meticulously, and report cards from school where Hope earned perfect scores every time. Those moments of sacrifice flooded my mind anew. The dawn hours spent stitching outfits for local women to fund her English lessons. The nights I survived on just bread and jelly so she could enjoy a proper meal with protein. The presents I scrimped for month after month to afford on her birthday. I thought of the evenings she returned in tears over her friends' fancy outfits. The very next day, I'd head to the Auburn Curb Market to grab precisely what she craved, even if it pushed back the rent payment. Year after year, Hope had reasons for keeping me at arm's length from her world. At first, school demands, then her job, followed by her boyfriend Devin, who clashed with in-laws. I'd nod along, make allowances, adjust to whatever she needed, her routine, her moods, her choices. But reflecting now, I saw how I'd shrunk in her eyes, claiming tinier corners of her attention until I didn't even hear about her wedding. The child I'd nurtured with endless devotion, the one I'd always prioritized, had turned into a distant figure doling out scraps of regard only when convenient. That Thursday, while tucking family snapshots into a cardboard shoebox, I stumbled on a picture that brought sobs deeper than any in years. It captured Hope's confirmation at age 8. She beamed in a stunning white gown I'd commissioned from a neighborhood tailor. In the shot, she clung to me with a bright, unfiltered joy, and I grinned right back. But studying my expression then, I spotted what had vanished, the absolute faith that my girl cherished me without limits. That occasion stood out vividly in my memory. I'd set aside money for half a year to pull it off. I booked the Magnolia Room Hall, gathered our entire clan. I whipped up grilled meats, creamy potato salad, iced tea, and an enormous red velvet cake ordered just for her. Hope played the queen, flitting between guests, proudly calling me out as her mama, the prettiest ever. Later that evening, after the crowd dispersed, she pitched in with cleanup and whispered, "Mama, when I'm older and throw my own bashes. You'll forever be the top priority. Forever. Hot tears streamed as I clutched that image. Where had that sweet child gone, the one who vowed I'd remain central? At what point did I fade into irrelevance, unworthy of witnessing her big day? I pressed on with the pictures and uncovered another that stung equally bad. Hope at 15, on her quinceañera night. We'd secured a venue in Midtown. A disc jockey spun tracks. There was catering for 150 guests, and even a band for the waltzes. I'd pulled extra hours for an entire year to make it magical, scrubbing homes during the day, watching kids after dark, hawking sweet potato pies at the weekend market, to bring her that joy, to deliver the festivities she merited. There we were in the frame, swaying as mother and daughter to one of the tunes. She'd insisted on our favorite melody. "Mama, you'd croon this to me as a kid when I felt poorly, and it soothed me every time," she'd said. "Let's twirl to it now, so I'll see how deeply I adore you." Those sentiments replayed in my head like echoes from a bygone era. How did I shift from her soothing force in illness to a source of embarrassment before her fresh circle? I dug deeper and pulled out a note from Hope at 18, penned right before college. She'd used rosy stationery, her script neat with doodled hearts along the edges. It said, "Dearest Mama, come morning, I embark on a fresh chapter. Yet I need you to understand, no success I'll claim happens without your unwavering support. You're my idol, my guide, the toughest lady I admire. Someday when I raise my own, I aim to mirror you. Devoted, giving everything, family above all. I cherish you wholly, and you'll eternally rank as my utmost in life. Your devoted girl, Hope." I pored over that note. I read those lines over and over before it sank in. This was the very same daughter who'd shut me out of her biggest milestone, the one who'd sworn I'd forever hold the top spot in her heart. Perched on my bed, clutching that trembling letter, I sobbed harder than I had since laying Elijah to rest. I wept for the child who'd penned such tender promises and for the stranger she'd turned into. I mourned the visions I'd cherished of serving as the bride's mom. I grieved over those daydreams of picking out her gown, planning the shower, escorting her to the altar. I shed tears for the bond between mother and daughter that I'd believed was real, when clearly it had only lived in my head. Once the tears subsided, fury erupted, a fury unlike anything in my 67 years. How could she disrespect me this way after all I'd poured into her? How could she act so heartless, so thankless? I'd given up my prime years, my friendships, my aspirations, everything for her sake. I'd toiled until my body screamed just so she could chase chances I'd never known. And her payback, public shame, total shutout, utter erasure. Yet after the anger, an even uglier feeling crept in: embarrassment. I began questioning if I'd brought this on myself somehow. Had I come on too strong, too needy, too plain for Hope's upscale world now? I recalled the looks from Franklin and Eleanor Hayes upon our first encounter. That faint vibe I'd puzzled over back then, but which hit me now like a revelation. Sympathy laced with unease. To them, I was the awkward in-law to endure, not embrace. Rising from the bed, I faced my reflection in the dressing table mirror. There stood Clara May Harrison, 67, with silver locks, palms calloused from endless labor, lines etched around my eyes from endless fretting. I didn't possess Eleanor's polish. I hadn't roamed the globe. I spoke no foreign tongues. I knew nothing of upscale vintages or stage plays, just an ordinary soul who'd stretched what little she had as far as possible. But did that diminish my worth? Did it excuse my girl acting like I was invisible? Sleep evaded me that evening. I lay there replaying every overlooked clue, every instance I should have seen my girl slipping away, the family meals that dwindled, the chats that grew brief, the drop-ins that demanded scheduling. It had all unfolded so slowly, so slyly, that I missed the steady push out of Hope's orbit. Come Friday dawn, I rang my sibling, Auntie Rosa, down in Birmingham, Alabama. I craved a sounding board, a chance to unload, some guidance. Auntie Rosa had forever been the boldest among us sisters, the one who laid it out plain. "Married behind your back," she bellowed once I'd spilled the tale. "That child's lost her mind. What kind of offspring pulls that on her own ma?" I recounted it all, from Hope's initial shifts in demeanor to stumbling on the ceremony via Facebook. Auntie Rosa heard me out in silence, a feat for her. "Clara May," she intoned gravely at last, "I've warned you for ages. You overdid it with that one. Coddled her from the cradle, hoisted her up high, and here's the fallout. Youngsters require limits. They must learn respect through effort and upkeep." Her bluntness stung, carrying kernels of reality. I'd forever doted on Hope. I'd caved to every outburst. I'd prioritized her every whim over my own, all from a place of deep affection, hoping she'd grasp what I'd missed out on. "So what's my move from here?" I choked out through fresh tears. "Now you step up like you should have ages back. Start putting yourself first." Auntie Rosa shot back with steel. "Hope's picked her spot for you in her world. Time you choose hers in yours." After clicking off with Auntie Rosa, I lingered in the kitchen for what felt like eternity, mulling her counsel. She nailed it. Hope had spelled out my role in her fresh chapter. Zilch. My cue to define her role in the next phase of mine. Saturday morning, sipping coffee alongside my pecan pastry, my cell buzzed. Unknown caller, but Hope's tone greeted me upon pickup. "Mom, you holding up?" She chirped brightly like the storm had passed. "You'll never believe it. We're home from the honeymoon. Cabo was unreal. Devin and I figured we'd swing by later to fill you in." Fill me in. After weeks of radio silence, after barring me from her vows, she now aimed to recap like I was some acquaintance updating on a getaway. "When exactly?" I queried. "Say 5-ish. We'll tote photos and a few trinkets we grabbed for you." Gifts from Cabo San Lucas to offset the deepest slight I'd ever endured. "Sounds good," I replied. "I'll be ready. I'll be right here." Once I ended the call, I remained standing there, clutching the phone, overwhelmed by a swirl of feelings I couldn't quite sort out. One side of me felt a rush of joy at the thought of seeing my daughter again, of wrapping her in my arms and sharing how deeply I'd longed for her. Yet another side, which seemed to intensify with each ticking minute, burned with anger over her icy demeanor toward me, the effortless assumption that all would be resolved after her actions. The remainder of the day passed in a blur as I tidied the home, brewed some iced tea, and picked up warm pecan pastries from the nearby shop. This was my ritual whenever Hope dropped by. I aimed for flawlessness in preparing for her arrival. But on this occasion, while scrubbing the floors and wiping down surfaces, I questioned why I kept pouring so much energy into someone who evidently disregarded my devotion. Precisely at 5 p.m., Hope and Devin pulled up. Hope appeared glowing, bronzed by the coastal rays, dressed in fresh outfits and utterly content. Devin offered a polite yet remote grin, the kind he always flashed during visits to my place. "Mom!" Hope exclaimed, enveloping me in an embrace like we were inseparable pals. "I've missed you so much. Check out this tan I got." I returned the hug, breathing in her costly fragrance, not the one from our shared days under the same roof. So much had transformed about her. The attire, the hairdo, the manner of expression. It felt like the Hope I once knew had been swapped for an upgraded model that left no room for me. "Come on in," I suggested. I poured them iced tea and presented the warm pecan treats. "Wow, Mom, this seems delicious," Hope remarked, though I saw she scarcely nibbled at the pastry. Likely such items no longer fit her refined routine. Her upscale existence had no space for local bakery indulgences. "Okay, spill the details," I prompted, settling opposite them in my modest parlor. "How did the ceremony go?" Hope shared a fleeting look with Devin prior to replying. "It was lovely, Mom. Quite understated, exactly as we envisioned. Nothing extravagant." "And the location?" I inquired, even as my chest tightened. "In a charming small chapel. Super personal, very secluded. Just us plus Devon's folks as witnesses. Only them and Devon's parents, as though I were invisible, as if 2 decades plus of nurturing her granted me no place there. Why keep it from me?" I pressed at last, my words quivering. Hope let out a breath and adopted that familiar guilty expression from her childhood mischief. "Mom, everything moves so quickly. You understand paperwork hassles. The timing just hit, and we chose to keep it straightforward. Plus, you know I was never into lavish events." It rang false. Hope had thrived on grand gatherings. Her 16th birthday bash, high school send-off, every milestone we'd marked together brimmed with crowds, feasts, and cheer. Yet for her nuptials, she'd opted for a cozy event excluding me. "But Mom," Hope went on in a honeyed tone, "that's the reason for our visit. To share the joy with you. See these presents we got." She retrieved a sack brimming with standard Cabo mementos, a clay ashtray, a few shells, a tea proclaiming, "I Cabo," some coconut sweets, likely impulse buys from the terminal with thoughts like, "We should grab something for Hope's mother." "Thanks, sweetie," I replied, each item stinging like a veiled insult masked as generosity. We chatted for a couple of hours about their getaway, the spots they explored, the upscale eateries they savored, the excursions they enjoyed. It resembled flipping through snapshots from unfamiliar travelers. I bobbed my head, grinned, and posed fitting queries. Internally, though, I sensed an irreversible fracture. As they departed with loose vows of future meetups and a nod to view their fresh digs, I sat solitary in the parlor, encircled by the tacky trinkets, bearing the heaviness of their lingering quiet. That evening, tucking the items into a drawer destined for obscurity, I resolved on a shift that would alter my path entirely. If Hope could navigate life sans my presence in her key chapters, I too could adapt to excluding her from mine. In the hush of pre-dawn, heart still aching yet fueled by budding resolve, I began outlining the initial move toward my fresh chapter, one where I claimed the lead, not merely the devoted parent scavenging for scraps of regard. The Clara May who'd spent years letting others define her role vanished then. The version rising come morning would emerge transformed. A woman at last grasping that esteem demands demonstration, and that a mother's profoundest affection might lie in honoring her self-worth. Sunday broke with a bright, unclouded heaven, stark against the turmoil brewing within. I rose before my typical hour at 5:01 a.m. For the first time in weeks, that oppressive weight in my chest had vanished, the burden that had shadowed me ever since learning about the wedding. Instead, a sharp, icy lucidity settled in, something utterly new to me. It felt like I'd undergone a quiet metamorphosis overnight, as though the Clara May who'd spent her entire existence letting others dictate her role in the world had at last stirred from an endless slumber. I brewed my coffee extra dark and robust, craving total mental sharpness for the steps ahead. I settled at the kitchen table, the same spot where I'd shared breakfasts over the past 15 years, the place of endless waits for hopeful phone calls that never rang, the site of meticulously prepared dinners for last-minute cancellations. Yet this morning, that table symbolized no more delays or letdowns. It marked the spot where Clara May Harrison would chart the pivotal choice of her existence. I pulled out a worn notebook, once filled with Hope's childhood doctor's visits, key school milestones, and her friends' birthdays. Today, those faded sheets would outline a starkly different agenda, my permanent departure from a world that no longer held space for me. On the opening page, I jotted, "Independent Strategy, Clara May Harrison, August 12, 2024. The date appeared odd in my unsteady script, yet those words rang truer than anything in years. My initial entry, "Evaluate assets." Through decades of devotion, I'd amassed a solid nest egg. No fortune, but far from vulnerability. There were lifetime earnings and savings, a modest home I owned outright in a neighborhood that had skyrocketed in worth, and a hidden bank account Hope never suspected, one where I'd stashed earnings from weekend dressmaking for local women over the years. I'd started it when Hope hit 18, envisioning it as her bridal present. Each deposit carried dreams of handing it over. My girl. This ensures your union begins debt-free, lets you claim your own roof, spares you the struggles I faced. For a full 10 years, I'd grown that fund on the fantasy of Hope's joyful shock at the reveal. But now, cast aside from her ceremony, those funds would forge an entirely new route. Next on the list, explore living arrangements. Lingering in this house with its memories haunting every nook wouldn't do. Every ring of the phone stirring hopes of Hope's apology. I required fresh territory, a domain solely my own to craft an existence free from scraps of her regard. I recalled Mrs. Eleanor Rodriguez, my neighbor for life, often raving about her sister Gloria's shift to a senior living complex in Dakar. "It's marvelous, Claire," she'd insist repeatedly. "Full of events, safety, folks our age. Gloria claims she's never known such liberty." Back then, I dismissed such spots as havens for the family forsaken. Now I saw them as sanctuaries for those choosing self-reliance. The third item stung deepest, yet proved essential. Ease away connections bit by bit. Vanishing abruptly would spark needless turmoil, arming Hope with excuses for her actions. My mother was always so theatrical. That's why we kept her out of big moments. No, my withdrawal needed to mirror my quiet, graceful arrival in Devon Hayes's world. Measured, courteous, irrevocable. Post-meal, I bathed and slipped into my navy Sunday frock, the one for services at St. Jude's. But today held no pews for me. I was launching the crucial inquiry of my days. I snatched my handbag, tucked the notebook within, and stepped from home with resolve unseen in ages. First destination, the bank. Navigating my familiar streets felt surreal, each stride distancing me from the 67-year existence I'd claimed. Mr. Fernando Lawson, who'd overseen my finances for the past decade, blinked in astonishment at my presence by the ATM on a Sunday. "Morning, Mrs. Harrison," he said upon spotting me. "All well." "Absolutely fine, Mr. Lawson," I answered, surprising myself with a genuine grin. "Just checking my monetary paths. Could be some shifts coming soon." "Certainly, madam. I'm here come Monday if you want a thorough account rundown." "Thank you kindly. Monday it is." That brief exchange fueled me beyond expectation. For the first time in ages, another treated me as an autonomous figure, wielding key fiscal choices. Not as some frail elder, a woman who required assistance handling her finances. Next, I headed directly to Decatur and the housing complex that Mrs. Rodriguez had recommended. Known as the Legacy at Peachtree, it quickly became apparent why my neighbor's sibling was so fond of it the moment I stepped off the bus. The spot was lovely and spotless, featuring meticulously maintained lawns and a sense of peace I hadn't encountered in ages. The front desk attendant, a warm-hearted lady by the name of Patricia, greeted me with a sincere grin after I shared my interest in exploring the amenities. "I'm thrilled you've stopped by," she remarked with energy. "We currently have a couple of appealing units open. Care for a complete walkthrough?" Over the following 2 hours, Patricia guided me through every section of the Legacy at Peachtree. The units were compact yet cozy, ideal for a single occupant. Each included a combined living and dining space, a single bedroom, a complete bath, and a fitted mini kitchen. The feature that captured me most was the terrace, with views of the greenery, where I pictured sipping my morning brew and catching the evening dusk. "We offer plenty of events," Patricia noted while we strolled the shared spaces. "Mondays bring yoga sessions. Tuesdays focus on knitting and handmade projects. Wednesdays host services in the on-site chapel. Thursdays feature dance lessons for ballroom styles. Fridays are dedicated to film screenings. Weekends include trips to various destinations like Savannah, Charleston, or Asheville. Every option she described appealed to me, pursuits I'd skipped over due to always aligning with Hope's free time. "And do the folks residing here find joy?" I inquired. "Well, Mrs. Harrison," Patricia responded candidly, "many of our tenants arrive following tough familial circumstances. Some mourn the loss of spouses. Others deal with kids settled in distant spots. Some just chose greater self-reliance. Initially, quite a few show up downcast and wistful, yet within months they transform into renewed versions of themselves, brighter, busier, more vibrant, if you will." Her statement struck a chord within me. More vibrant. When was the last time I'd truly sensed vitality? How many seasons had passed in mere survival mode, holding out for my child to fit me into her world? What qualifications are needed to reside here? I pressed. Patricia outlined the full procedure. Applicants must exceed 60 years of age, met that, and possess steady earnings to handle the monthly charge. My reserves covered years ahead, plus clearing a simple health check to confirm self-sufficiency. My condition remained strong. The fee encompassed upkeep, protection, programs, and essential services. Though substantial, it fit neatly within my funds. How much time does enrollment require? I wondered. With all paperwork submitted this week, we could finalize in 2 weeks, Patricia answered. Does one of the units catch your eye? No, I gazed once more at the terrace of my favorite space, the garden-oriented one, where I'd spotted several dwellers engaged in lively talks beneath a large tree's canopy. Right then, a choice hit me with surprising speed and sharpness, even to myself. "I'll go with the garden-facing terrace unit," I declared firmly. "Wonderful pick," Patricia cheered. "It's among the top choices. This is the document checklist and the agreement for your thorough review." That afternoon, I arrived back at my place carrying an emotion absent for so long, real optimism. Not optimism that hope might shift, not optimism for reverting to past patterns, but optimism for a fresh chapter shaped entirely by my choices. That evening, rather than my usual Sunday TV routine, I focused on sorting my papers: birth record, income verification, account summaries, ID. It felt odd assembling files for a life restart at 67, yet each item I arranged bolstered my resolve. Monday morning, I arrived at the bank right at opening 9 a.m. Mr. Fernando Lawson met me with his standard polished politeness. But as I described needing substantial account adjustments for a private venture, I caught a new admiration in his gaze. "Mrs. Harrison, it's wonderful to see you taking charge of your finances this way," he commented while scanning my statements. "Your saving habits over the years have been impressively consistent. You hold quite robust assets." Those remarks ignited a self-assurance I hadn't realized existed. For countless years, I'd viewed myself as someone with scant means, reliant on others' goodwill. In truth, though, I'd toiled steadily, amassed wealth prudently, and forged a sturdy economic base all on my own. "I require a large shift to my everyday account," I detailed. "Plus, I'd like details on secure options that provide me my monthly earnings." Over the following hour, Mr. Lawson outlined various investment choices that would generate steady returns without dipping into the core funds. This was knowledge I'd never pursued earlier, since I'd always viewed my savings solely as a buffer for crises or for aiding hope. But now, I realized there were paths forward, ways to let my funds generate benefits for myself rather than holding them back just for others. Afterward, I headed straight to Mr. Michael Sanders' office. The attorney Mrs. Rodriguez had suggested to me years back during issues with my home paperwork. I wanted to ensure everything was properly arranged, and above all, to revise my testament. "Mrs. Harrison, what can I do for you?" Mr. Sanders inquired as I stepped inside. "I need to amend my will and streamline my holdings," I stated plainly, wondering if the purpose of my arrival caught him off guard. He gave no sign of it. For about 40 minutes, we examined my real estate papers, financial accounts, and coverage plans. Seeing it all compiled was striking. I'd truly amassed a substantial portfolio through sheer effort and resolve. "Any particular updates in mind for the will?" he probed. "Absolutely," I answered promptly. I'd like to allocate 50% of my holdings to organizations supporting single working moms, and the remaining 50% to my daughter, though with a stipulation. What sort? That she receives her share only after composing a note detailing her choices regarding our bond. No need for regrets, just candor about her motives. That note has to go to you as the observer, regardless of whether I'm around to see it. Mr. Sanders jotted it all down meticulously. That's a considerate provision, Mrs. Harrison. It offers her a chance to ponder without demanding amends. Precisely, I agreed. This isn't about payback, Mr. Sanders. It's about helping her grasp that choices carry weight, even those from kids toward their folks. As I departed the attorney's space, I sensed a profound shift in myself. I'd seized command of my finances, protected my path ahead, and set firm lines for my ties with Hope, lasting beyond my time. The ensuing days blurred into a whirlwind of tasks that occupied my mind and energy. I brought in a relocation team to evaluate my possessions. I chose to retain just the necessities: outfits, a bit of modest furnishings, key pictures, items rich in personal meaning. The rest would go to donations or auctions. The toughest choice involved Hope's remnants in her old room: academic awards, volumes, garments she'd abandoned upon leaving. In the end, I boxed them up neatly with tags and stored them in a unit I leased close to her place. Should she desire them someday, she could claim them. Otherwise, in time. That week, Hope reached out twice. Our chat stayed polite yet aloof from either end. She shared updates on her fresh position, ideas for sprucing up the flat, meals with the Hayes. I responded with courtesy, posed fitting queries, but revealed nothing of my schemes. For the first time in ages, I held significant private matters apart from my girl. "All good, Mom?" she wondered during the second ring. "You seem altered." "All's well, darling," I said truthfully. "Just sorting household matters. You get it. Need a hand with something." Once that offer would have warmed me deeply. Now it just underscored how Hope still pictured me as reliant, not self-sufficient. "No thanks, sweetie. I've got it handled." Come Friday that week, Patricia from Legacy at Peachtree contacted me. My request was greenlit, and I could settle in come Monday if I chose. That evening, solitary in my home amid crates and shrouded pieces, I felt no sorrow or reminiscence. Instead, a thrill surged through me, one absent for years, the buzz of embarking on fresh beginnings. Saturday dawned, and as I savored my final brew at the table where I'd crafted countless cherished dinners for Hope, my cell buzzed. It was her. "Mom, Devin, and I would love for you to join us for supper tomorrow, Sunday. We're testing the new eating area in the apartment." It was the overture I'd longed for over months. At last, they sought to draw me in, display their space, make me feel woven into their world. Yet the moment had passed. "Oh, darling, what a pity," I responded calmly. "I've got commitments tomorrow." "With whom?" "Some recent acquaintances. We're taking a short excursion to Lake Lanier." It held true. The Legacy at Peachtree community had a Sunday outing lined up, and I'd registered already. "But Mom, we could reschedule. It's import." "It dawned on us that you wanted to visit our place." "Thanks, sweetie. But I've got other commitments right now. Perhaps we can arrange it later when my schedule opens up." A prolonged pause hung on the line from her side. Hope wasn't accustomed to my having arrangements that didn't revolve around her availability. "All right then. We'll figure out a get-together down the road." "Absolutely, darling. Enjoy your meal." After ending the call, I remained in that well-known kitchen one final time, a profound sense of fulfillment washing over me with a smile. For the very first time, Hope had needed to adapt to my timetable rather than the other way around. Though minor, this shift represented a far greater evolution. Clara May Harrison was no longer the type who lingered in anticipation of an invitation. She had evolved into someone with her independent existence, her personal agenda, her self-derived joy. On Sunday evening, following a delightful excursion to Lake Lanier, where I'd connected with 3 charming ladies destined to be my fresh community, I gathered my remaining possessions. The relocation was set for early Monday, and by midday, I'd be established in my updated residence. That concluding evening in the home where I'd nurtured hope, tears and sentimentality didn't surface for me. Rather, I experienced profound appreciation for my former self and authentic thrill for the person I was emerging into. I'd taken the boldest step imaginable, prioritizing my fulfillment over seeking validation from anyone else. Come early Monday, while the relocation team hauled my modest items, I cast a final glance across each space in the dwelling. In Hope's vacated bedroom, utterly bare now, I murmured a quiet goodbye. Thanks for showing me that authentic affection can involve recognizing the moment to depart. The Clara May who stepped out that Monday morning was utterly transformed. She understood that self-respect couldn't be compromised, that courtesy is demonstrated through actions, and that restarting anew is always possible with the proper choice. As the transport vehicle headed off to Dakar, en route to my fresh beginning at the Legacy at Peachtree, I occupied the front seat, beaming ahead at what lay in store. At 67, it was the first instance of true ambiguity about the future, and that unknown felt like the purest liberation imaginable. My initial week at the Legacy at Peachtree unfolded like an enchanting reverie I wished to linger in forever. Each dawn I'd rise in my snug new flat, prepare coffee in the compact kitchen that belonged solely to me, and step out to the terrace overlooking the grounds, where I'd already spotted some upcoming acquaintances. Among them was Mrs. Mercedes, 72, a retired elementary educator with 4 decades of classroom experience. Then Mrs. Delanor, 69, formerly in a public sector role, brimming with captivating tales from her earlier days, and Mr. Alexander, 75, another widower akin to myself, once a woodworker who now crafted petite pieces of furniture as thoughtful presents for his budding circle. It felt odd yet welcome to belong to a circle that appreciated my essence, not my utility to them. During shared gatherings for meals, these new companions inquired about my experiences, views, and aspirations. Nobody viewed me as merely a parent or an uneasy in-law figure. I stood as Clara May, an individual with unique narratives, ambitions, and character. On that first Wednesday, I joined the knitting session guided by Mrs. Eleanor Rodriguez, a graceful 74-year-old who had sewn garments professionally in her younger years. As I stitched floral patterns onto a cloth, it struck me that I hadn't pursued any hobby just for delight in ages, without pondering if Hope would approve or if it served the household. "You know, Clara," Mrs. Rodriguez remarked, inspecting my stitches, "you've got real talent for this. You ought to attend all the sessions." Though straightforward, the praise warmed me deeply. When was the last time I'd earned praise for my own skill? In my old routine, successes were gauged by their benefit to Hope, but now someone finally esteemed my efforts on their merits alone. Thursday brought my debut in ballroom lessons. Mr. Alexander Davis, a poised 76-year-old ex-PE instructor, directed the group with infectious tolerance and delight. Initially, self-consciousness gripped me. I hadn't stepped onto a dance floor in ages. Yet Mr. Davis eased my worries. "Nobody's critiquing you here, Clara," he assured me with a warm grin. "We're all about enjoyment and discovering that fresh pursuits are timeless." In the session, I tried the cha-cha, the waltz, and a touch of salsa. Laughter bubbled up from me more freely than it had in ages. Fellow participants cheered my tricky maneuvers, guided me through mix-ups, and enveloped me in the warmth of an intentional family, one I'd selected, and that had selected me in return. That evening, savoring a solo supper in my space without any isolation, my phone buzzed. Hope was on the line. "Mom, where on earth are you?" she demanded, tone laced with urgency. "I stopped by the house. It's totally deserted. The folks next door mentioned you'd left. What's happening?" The blend of bewilderment and alarm in her voice echoed back to her childhood days, when she had lost in the bustling market. For an instant, my motherly urge pushed me to comfort her right away, to clarify the situation, to promise her I was okay. Yet the transformed Clara May, who had surfaced over these recent weeks, stayed calm. "I'm doing great, sweetheart," I responded with a steady tone. "I've relocated to a spot that's better suited to my years." "Better suited? What exactly does that imply? Why keep me in the dark?" "Those were private choices that didn't need your okay," I stated resolutely, though without any hostility. A lengthy pause stretched across the phone. Hope wasn't accustomed to me handling major choices solo, despite how she'd been charting her own path for years without looping me in. "So, where's your new home?" "Somewhere that brings me joy, darling. That's the key point." "Mom, you're frightening me. This behavior isn't like you at all. Are you upset with me over something?" That query used to throw me off balance in the past. I'd have hurried to assure her I wasn't upset, that my love for her remained strong, that all I craved was our shared happiness. But these days, I recognized it for the tactic it was, a bid to slip back into our former pattern, where I handled her feelings for her. "I'm not upset, Hope. I'm just pursuing my own path." And what exactly is that? It signifies I've come to realize I deserve to choose for myself, to craft my own future, to find contentment without needing validation from anyone else. Yet another quiet moment. I pictured Hope grappling with this unfamiliar side of her mom on the line. "Could you share your location?" "Devin and I are concerned." Devin and I. It was forever Devin and I, like they formed one unit dictating aspects of my existence. Still, a shift colored Hope's voice this time. After ages, she sounded truly concerned for my well-being, not merely irritated that I wasn't on call whenever she required me. "I'm residing at the Legacy at Peachtree in Dakar. I revealed it at last. It's a lovely community tailored for folks in my age group, a retirement facility." The label stung a bit, but it didn't catch me off guard. To Hope, any dwelling for seniors instantly qualified as retirement living. "No, sweetheart, it's an independent setup, but surrounded by others navigating the same life phase as mine. I've got my private unit, my personal pursuits, my independent circle of friends." Circle of friends. Real astonishment laced her words, as though the idea of my social world apart from hers had never crossed her mind. "That's right, Hope. I've made fresh connections, taken up hobbies I love, and lined up engagements that don't revolve around hoping you'll squeeze me in." The statement emerged sharper than intended, but I stood by it. Hope needed to grasp the fallout from her actions. "Mom, we've always carved out time for you. Did you truly set aside moments to weave me into your marriage ceremony?" The ensuing hush dragged on, thick with tension. It marked the initial direct nod to the wedding snub, and we both recognized it as the unspoken issue looming over every talk since. "Mom, I've already covered how it unfolded quickly, how it stayed low-key. Hope." I cut in with a solid yet even voice. "I'm done with further justifications. What's done is done. No need for regrets or breakdowns. I simply need you to see that choices carry repercussions." "Like what?" "The fallout that I've realized I'm not central in your world anymore, so I've resolved you won't be in mine." The declaration flowed with a sharpness that caught even me by surprise. No fury tainted my words, no bitterness, just a serene truthfulness that left me feeling unburdened, like I hadn't in ages. "So does that signal you're done being my mom?" The query stung, as I detected the childlike vulnerability beneath her grown-up facade, yet it also bolstered me by underscoring what Hope had forfeited. "I'll forever be your mother, darling. But gone is the version who lingers for scraps of your focus. Gone is the one who tolerates mistreatment merely to stay involved in your days. If you're seeking a bond with me, it must rest on equal regard. And how might that play out?" For the first time, Hope was probing specifically about my expectations for us, rather than presuming I'd mold myself to her terms. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted candidly, "but I do know it can't mirror the past." Once we ended the call that evening, I lingered on my terrace, gazing at Dakar's twinkling lights, a blend of sorrow and release washing over me. It had been my toughest dialogue ever, yet utterly essential. At last, I'd drawn firm lines with my girl. I'd voiced my emotions without shielding hers. I'd prioritized my self-respect over preserving harmony. The ensuing days slipped by sans word from Hope, and remarkably, her quiet no longer stirred worry in me. I was far too occupied immersing I had too much going on with my fresh start to fret over her silence. Come Friday, I joined the regular trip into the heart of Atlanta, touring the Georgia State Capitol and grabbing a meal at a classic soul food spot close to Centennial Olympic Park. Saturday brought me to my very first yoga session, where I learned my flexibility surpassed my expectations. After Sunday's service in the chapel at Legacy at Peachtree, I was heading back to my place when Patricia, the front desk attendant, flagged me down. "Mrs. Harrison, you've got guests," she announced, beaming, a young pair claiming to be relatives. My pulse quickened slightly, but it stemmed from intrigue rather than the old nerves. I wondered what Hope and Devin might want this time. They were waiting in the guest area, perched side by side on a stylish couch. Hope appeared anxious, almost delicate, far removed from the assured, accomplished figure she'd shown in our previous run-ins. Devin seemed ill at ease, like he'd prefer to be elsewhere. "Mama," Hope murmured, rising as I approached. "Thanks for meeting with us." It struck me as odd that she was expressing gratitude for this encounter, as though she'd grasped she couldn't just drop into my world without notice anymore. "Please sit," I suggested, settling into the seat opposite. "How've you been?" "We're okay," Hope answered, even as her tone hinted at trouble. "We came to check out your new home to ensure it's suiting you." I glanced around the welcoming space with its refined decor, thriving greenery, and broad panes flooding the room with sunlight. Then my eyes returned to them, this duo who'd shown up to verify my setup, implying they held veto power over my choices. "As you can tell, I'm settling in just fine," I responded with a sincere grin. "This spot fits me ideally." "Yeah, it seems upscale," Devin conceded, breaking his quiet streak. "Bet it's pricey." And there it surfaced, the true worry, not my well-being or ease, but the chunk of their legacy I might be draining. "Luckily, I handle the costs without issue," I countered steadily. "I've earned and stashed away more than you realized." I observed their swift look between them, a clear sign they'd discussed my finances prior to arriving. "Mama, we hate the idea of you depleting your funds in a setup like this," Hope pressed, her words laced with concern. "Why would that happen?" I inquired, truly puzzled. "Well, you used to say every penny counted. That cash didn't stretch." She had a point. For ages, I drilled that into them. What I'd omitted, though, was how it barely lasted because I always put their demands ahead of my own, stowing funds for their crises instead of indulging myself. "Yes, I did track every cent," I acknowledged, "but only to build a safety net for you, ready for whenever you called on it. With it now evident you can manage solo, I'm free to invest in my joy." "What do you mean we don't require your support?" Devin shot back, his tone edged with strain. "I mean you're thriving, self-reliant grown-ups who handle choices on your own. No input from me needed, even on big ones like tying the knot. If you're that autonomous, my savings aren't earmarked for your backups anymore." The ensuing quiet hung heavy. I watched them absorb my reasoning, grasping they couldn't claim full freedom from me when convenient, yet tap my assets at whim. "Mama," Hope ventured at last, her voice gentling, "are you really mad at me?" It sounded like a kid's plea, not an adult's. For the first time post-wedding, a flicker of empathy stirred for her, not the unquestioning kind that had let her slide for years, but something sharper. "I'm not mad, sweetheart," I assured her truthfully. "I'm let down, hurt, yet mostly I'm content. Content. At ease with finally knowing myself outside the role of your parent. Content with uncovering joy independent of your validation or focus." Hope went quiet briefly, and I spotted moisture gathering in her gaze. "Does that signify you don't care for me now?" Sato, the query I'd anticipated arrived, and my response was prepared. "I cherish you beyond measure, Hope, but I've come to see that affection doesn't entail tolerating mistreatment. I've realized real love demands limits, self-respect, and equal regard. So how do we mend things? Devin interjected, as if the outcome genuinely mattered to him. I studied the pair. This duo aiming to patch it up, likely banking on a quick stopover and some regrets to reset everything. Nothing requires mending, I stated evenly. I'm not damaged, I'm not ill. I'm not behaving out of mere pettiness. I'm just embracing the existence I truly merit. Yet can we remain connected as kin? Hope inquired, her tone quivering. We'll forever be kin, I reassured her. However, it'll form a transformed sort of kinship, one built on mutual regard, where we involve one another in key matters, and where we regard each other as mature equals. How are we supposed to grasp your expectations of us? Devin posed. It struck me as a sensible inquiry, and I valued his straightforwardness. Hope understands the essence of showing me dignity, I responded, gazing straight at my girl. She managed it for numerous years back when she was little. All she must do is recall that approach. Hope inclined her head gradually, as though at last grasping that no easy solution existed, that genuine effort was required to restore our bond. Might we reach out to you occasionally? She ventured in a faint whisper. Absolutely, I affirmed, though I can't always be free when you dial. I've carved out my personal routine now, complete with pursuits, obligations, and engagements of my own. Uttering that felt oddly unfamiliar. Across 67 years, I'd never possessed duties I wouldn't drop for Hope. These days, I juggle weaving sessions, outings, meals alongside companions, and a vibrant social circle that matters deeply to me. As they departed that afternoon, following hazy vows to foster superior dialogue and alter their ways, I lingered in the guest area a bit more, absorbing the exchange. No grand reunion had unfolded, no streams of regretful tears, no pledges of swift transformation. Yet something far more precious had emerged: acknowledgement. For the initial time, Hope had conceded her mistreatment of me, the choices that wounded me, and the substantial labor needed if she desired any ongoing tie with me. That evening, amid the shared meal in the Legacy at Peachtree's communal space, my recent acquaintances probed about my guests. All well with the relatives, Mrs. Mercedes wondered, her worry authentic. All is precisely right as it ought to be, I answered, beaming. For the first time in ages, all stands precisely right as it ought to be. And that rang true. I couldn't predict if Hope and I might reclaim intimacy. I wasn't certain if she'd genuinely evolve or merely refine her handling of me. But I recognized my own irreversible shift, and that regardless of our bond's fate, I'd thrive. The version of Claire who'd lingered for years awaiting her daughter's inclusion had vanished eternally. In her stead arose a woman attuned to her value, harboring her individual aspirations, and empowered to find joy irrespective of external validation. That evolution, as agonizing as it proved, outweighed any mending that demanded reverting to my former diminished, compliant self. For the debut in my existence, I felt liberated, and that liberty resembled the grandest present I'd bestowed upon myself. These days, 6 months onward, I rouse each dawn in my compact yet snug dwelling. I peer through the pane and behold an altered realm. It's no realm devoid of ache, but one in which I select my companions in the narrative. I nurture the greenery on my veranda. I delve into volumes I'd long yearned to explore. I attend the fresh sanctuary where none identify me as Hope's parent. I'm merely Clara May Harrison, a 67-year-old discovering self-focused living, following decades devoted solely to others. At times, unfamiliar digits ring, ones I suspect belong to Hope, routing through others' devices to contact me. Her pleas echo on the voicemail, perpetually tearful, contrite, vowing alteration. But certain dismissals inflict wounds too profound for mere utterances to mend. Some dismissals prove too absolute for basic regret to absolve. Hope possessed the chance to draw me into her life's pinnacle event, yet opted to exclude me. Now I opt to exclude her from my renewed chapter. Over these months, I've discovered the isolation I dreaded evaporates when one dwells in harmony with oneself. My routine brims with endeavors that feed my spirit, weaving lessons alongside Mrs. Rodriguez, midweek gatherings with Mr. Davis, and Saturday ventures unveiling Georgia and Southern locales I'd overlooked. During group suppers, my companions heed me closely, whether recounting my early days, passing along maternal recipes, or debating the afternoon cereals we savor collectively. Just yesterday in the market, a woman spotted me and mentioned Hope posting bounties for leads on my location. I offered a courteous grin and noted that connections form when folks are prepared for them. No fury stirs in me, no reprisal, no animosity, only the serenity of one who chose wisely in the perfect moment. Hope grasped, via the harshest lesson imaginable, that mothers harbor emotions too, that affection holds limits, and that certain thresholds once sealed remain shut indefinitely. Last week, a lawyer hand-delivered an official-looking letter to me. It came from Hope, neatly typed without any blotches from crying or trembling script revealing inner turmoil. Inside, my daughter laid out, in a tone of startling detachment, why she'd left me out of the wedding. She framed it as a straightforward choice. The Hayes pushed for an intimate gathering. They aimed to spare my emotions without sparking tensions with her fresh family ties. I pored over those words 3 full times before grasping their full weight. Hope had boiled down the deepest wound of my existence to mere logistics. She'd recast my rejection as a diplomatic maneuver between clans. Nowhere did she acknowledge the damage she'd inflicted on me. Nowhere did she grasp the toll of single-handedly bringing her up. Nowhere was there thanks for the endless, unwavering affection I'd poured into her. That message solidified a truth I'd long sensed deep down. The hopeful child I'd nurtured, the one who'd sworn I'd forever hold pride of place in her world, had vanished for good. Standing in her stead was an adult who treated our connection like a routine duty to handle pragmatically, rather than a cherished tie warranting tenderness and honor. I tucked the letter into a wooden chest beside faded photos that had outlasted the years. Not from bitterness, but simply because certain messages demand only to be absorbed, not rebutted. A mother's devotion doesn't fade, it merely evolves. My feelings for Hope shifted into a new shape, regard for my self-worth, attention to my joy, safeguarding my serenity. This dawn, as I tend to the greenery on my deck and gaze at the sun rising above Dakar, my mind drifts to fellow women who've devoted lifetimes hoping for recognition from those around them. I reflect on moms who've forsaken their aspirations for kids who eventually regard them as cumbersome weights. I ponder the grandmas who mind the little ones, only to hear they're meddling excessively. I consider us all, taught that our value hinged on endless giving to others, never on what we merit in return. To every one of those souls, I'd share the wisdom I've gained. It's never too soon or too late to prioritize your fulfillment. It's never too late to draw lines. It's never too late to affirm that you warrant dignity, that you warrant thoughtfulness, that you warrant being cherished as the priceless soul you've always been. The liberty I embrace today sprang not from retaliating against Hope, but from unshackling myself. It arose not from vengeance, but from honoring my own value. It emerged not from resentment, but from the self-compassion that had slumbered far too long. The evening before, following our shared meal in the neighborhood, Mrs. Mercedes inquired whether I second-guessed my choice. "Don't you long for your girl?" she probed, her voice laced with sincere worry for my state. "I yearn for the child I imagined she was," I answered forthrightly. Yet I don't pine for the bond we truly shared, as it was quietly draining my spirit. That's the most unvarnished honesty I've ever voiced. For ages I clung to an illusion, convinced Hope reciprocated my devotion equally. The hard fact, to her I served as a handy resource in moments of necessity and an irritation otherwise. Embracing that truth stung deeply, yet it also set me free. Now, I pen these thoughts from my deck, accompanied by the trickle of the neighborhood garden's fountain, the aroma of the begonia I set in the ground just last week, and the firm belief that I selected the wise route. The days ahead remain a mystery, but I trust they'll unfold in a realm where my contentment rests in my own hands, not swayed by others' whims. At times, the profoundest affirmation lies in the quiet one elects to uphold, and within that quiet, Clara May Harrison at last uncovered her expression, her resilience, and her tranquility. Enjoy the tale. And from which town are you tuning in? Drop by in the comments to connect. If the narrative resonated, consider a super. Thanks to fuel more tales like this one. Many thanks for your kind backing. Can't wait to hear your takes on the story. Check the display for 2 fresh personal accounts I truly endorse. My channel brims with even more. Hit subscribe and stick around. Catch you for the upcoming life tale. Warmly, with admiration.